Hello and welcome to Alchemy with Sheeana Leigh. I'm your host, Sheeana Leigh, and today I'm super excited because I'm bringing my best friend and also a peer who is fabulous at what we're about to dive into, Crystal, into this space and into this field. And you're about to learn so much about regulating and the nervous system and TRE and all of that goodness. And I'm super excited to bring this to you because it is fundamental to resourcing, understanding your body, and it has been the fundamental key aspect that I learned on my journey and like understanding my sexuality and all of the somatics of the body. Like this is like the key core piece. So we're just gonna drop right in and get super real and raw with Crystal. I would love to invite you on to introduce yourself and into this space.
Cool. Thank you, darling. It's such a pleasure to be doing this with you. As you know, I'm super passionate about all of this work. So I'm a holistic counselor and a somatic therapist, and that is my passion. And I definitely see how what I do and what you do, this like beautiful interconnecting thread there. Today I'm just kind of going to be touching in on TRE as a practice, which stands for trauma tension release exercises. And our nervous system and polyvagal theory as well, because I really love that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason why I've brought you on specifically is because you're fantastic at explaining things the way that I could never explain things, very logically and very able for people to understand and kind of really like straight to the point. And we're going to be focusing on TRE and mostly because it's a lot of the work that I do in regards to how we release things in the body, how our body actually works, and also and how we release things like sexually, right? Like when we have these beautiful moments of release and how our body processes it. So I would love to talk about that first and foremost. What is TRE? Why TRE and the body process on releasing through things through the body. Take it
Yeah.
away.
Cool. Okay, so TRE is essentially a practice, a somatic practice of intentionally like activating our organic tremor system in our body. So they call it a neurogenic tremor. So basically that means that we don't have to think about it. It is the body doing it. So we're not consciously choosing to tremor our body. It is doing it on its own. And so this is like something that every mammal possesses. So not just humans. It's not special. It's the way our nervous system is wired. And so it's literally just when we get activated, and I will touch into this a little bit more detail soon, but when we get activated, all of those stress hormones come up through the body, cortisol, adrenaline, all of that. And then our body's way of depressurizing that and coming back down to a regulated state is to shake it out. And so our body literally shakes. And so I'm sure you and many other people that'll be listening or watching this can think of times in their lives where they have had the shakes. And so the process pretty much is just activating the nervous system in a safe way, allowing those tremors to come through, and then we're sort of releasing all of that built up tension caused by those stress hormones. And then we get to be a little bit more grounded and in our body and free from carrying that around. Um, yeah. So I think um, I think it's super important to engage in this because often in our society we have been taught to like shut this down, right? So we've got like this whole idea that when we get scared or angry or geez, even after an orgasm, that shaking is weird and it's not okay, and or maybe it's weak, or we kind of attach these strange beliefs to it, and so we actually try to shut it down and stop shaking, like, oh, pull it together, and get your shit together. And that is, yeah, not proactive at all. We're actually then trapping it in even more into the body. and then just carrying that around with us. And yeah, it can go on to have a whole heap of effects on us, not just emotionally and psychologically, but our actual physical body too. So holding that tension in muscles and keeping particular muscle patterns in the body. So, like if you're someone who
Mhm.
has your shoulders up here all the time, like when you're feeling stressed, then your body changes and starts to do that all the time. And then over time, you start getting all these aches and pains and all of this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. I remember when I first started to learn that that was our body's natural response, I was kind of really shook by that. I was like, of course, that makes so much sense. And obviously, having done, before I started delving into my studies, I obviously went down like this whole like shamanic journeying and releasing. And in that, my body would naturally like tremor and shake. And also through massive like sexual experiences, my body would like naturally tremor and shake. Sometimes I would cry, and I didn't really know what was going on with me. I thought that there was something wrong with me, right? And then when I started to learn in my studies that, that is the way, like we'll touch on the polyvagal theory and the responses of fight, flight, freeze. And I wanted to make a special note of fawn because as women, we tend to fawn. uh, but I really wanted to, like when I started learning that and understanding that that's our body's natural way of releasing things, like when we were tribal people getting chased by lions and stuff, we would use that fight response or flight response and naturally like decompress that energy within our body. And as society has gone on and we've become more contained, we don't let our natural body responses actually do its thing to move through these processes. And then when we think about it, like even, children naturally do this when they're like chucking a tantrum and throwing like fits, and
Yep.
like, it's
Letting
screaming,
it out.
getting it
Yeah.
out of their body. And as
Yes.
adults, we see, we've been told like we get shut down, don't throw a tantrum, don't do that. We don't let them express the natural body's responses to move through that like energetic, whatever it is, anger, frustration, sadness, the fight, flight, fawn, freeze response. Yeah, so it makes sense that we actually give space, like in society now, like we actually start to understand this and we give space to our body to actually move through those processes, which I do a lot of my work and you do too, to actually to shake and to tremor and to release organically in a safe space to allow your body to come back to its like homeostasis, like
Yeah.
absolutely.
And yeah, just touching more on that evolutionary process as well, like, when we were cavemen and literally
Uh-huh.
faced with death, like we have to survive. So you have to fight or you have to run or you do have to go into freeze if there's, an animal gnawing on your arm or whatever. And how that has changed for us, we still have the same stress response, but the circumstances are much different. So, we might still be activating that same part of the nervous system, but instead of a lion, it's your boss at work giving you a grilling or something. And so it
Yeah.
does become, not appropriate for the situation to attack your boss or run out the door down the street, or, we kind of have to sit there and suck it up and we don't get to express that, inside chemical change that's happening in the body. And so that is exactly why it's so important to create time and to create space to actually release that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
And that's just like an everyday example, but and we all go through that every day, regardless of what our experiences are. But then when we go into trauma as well and what we've experienced with trauma, then it's a whole other level again that we're holding on to. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's what I love about this the most is it's such a diverse modality to work with. It doesn't matter what your experience is in life, it is beneficial. So whether
Yeah.
you've had severe trauma or maybe you're a professional athlete or you're, just living your everyday 9 to 5 life, like it doesn't matter. We all experience stress and we all have times where we're not able to release it in the moment. And
Yeah.
so it does make sense to kind of tap into this and give the body time to release whatever it's been storing throughout its day. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is fundamental as humans to understand that our nervous system, how it's wired, how it releases in our day-to-day life, and then also understanding that that gets kind of amplified in like sexual spaces because everything is activated within you, like with the meridians that are connected throughout your body and everything. So those natural releases of tremor is quite natural and normal for us. So yes, ooh, 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 fundamental pieces. What were we going to say? Sorry.
I was going to say, I think what I also really love about the work that you do is that you provide this. Oh, sorry, I keep knocking my desk. Um, you provide this space where we can activate the nervous system, but in a safe way. And
Yeah.
so, maybe this is a good time for me to bring up my little diagrams on the
Yeah,
nervous.
go for it. I can't
Um,
wait for you to share this because I think it's
yes,
so visually, I'm a visual learner, so visually pleasing to me and to really grasping things.
because I would really love to, yeah, kind of dive in a little bit more how all of this does interconnect with your work as well. And I think
Yeah,
it's very much a missing part in trauma work and the way that
absolutely.
we work with the nervous system as well. So let me just see if I can do this nice and easily without making
Perfect. And
a
if you
mess
are
of
on the
things.
podcast listening to this via audio, I will share links of where you can actually go to visually see this guide as well. And I'll try and describe it as we're going also. Beautiful.
Great. Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of start with a little bit of a visual of our window of tolerance, which I'm sure you have touched on before with your clients and audience. So basically, what we're kind of looking at here is we can see the optimal arousal. And so that's, in that middle bit. And we can see that nice curvy line that goes up and down. And, we're doing this all day long, right? Like we get activated, we come back down. We get activated, we come back down. And then, often what happens, and I mean, this diagram says traumatic event, but the reality is it doesn't have to be this like big event trauma, like a car accident or abuse or like, natural events. A traumatic event is literally just how your nervous system perceives an experience, right? And
Yeah.
so if we're not able to come back down or get back up, then we get stuck outside that window of tolerance. And so above that, we've got the hyperarousal, which is our fight and flight or the sympathetic nervous system. And down below, we've got that stuck in off kind of position, which is our freeze response, which is our shutdown. And so I also really like to highlight that none of these states are bad because I think that there's a bit
Mm.
of hype around the fight, flight, and freeze as like, oh, they're bad, we've got to get out of them. But they actually serve quite a
Oof.
big importance in our life. We
Yes.
need them, so the fight and flight part of the nervous system is also where we experience sexual arousal. It's also where we experience that drive to exercise or excitement over excitement. So there's
Yeah.
plenty going on there. Without our sympathetic system, we wouldn't get much done.
Yeah.
But it is also where we go into that activation of fear, anxiety, anger, rage, and those kind of things. And then on the flip side of that, going down to our freeze part, our parasympathetic of the nervous system. Again, we need that to sleep. We need it to digest. We need it to rest. This is where you're going to meditate and all of those kind of more flaccid states. So again, very much needed. But when we get stuck in there for long periods of time, then it looks like depression. It looks like no energy, chronic fatigue, slow digestive issues, and things like that. And so what we're aiming to do is have this nervous system where we can flow in and out nice and easy. And the truth is, most people don't. And even the people that think that they are uh, not traumatized or, life is pretty cruisy, a lot of the time they have got so used to living in either one of these states in the sympathetic or the parasympathetic that it's just become their norm and they don't even know what it's like to be living in like that social engagement part of the nervous system.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you touched on that and spoke about how they're not bad or wrong, or it is a natural, organic state and space that we actually flux and flow in and out of, because there is this huge thing at the moment of, getting out of fight, flight, and freeze and just always being in your window and tolerance. And if you always were in your window of tolerance, you wouldn't grow, you wouldn't change, you wouldn't get out of your comfort level, you'd achieve nothing. Like, it's just not, it's actually natural. And yes, absolutely, having like flowing through that quite like resourcefully is where you want to be, right? Because you know you see this also even in like after peak experiences of being like hyper aroused, you can shut right down to like hypo, and like shut it
Yes,
off.
exactly. And
And
that's what we kind of see, like even in this diagram where, we're going up and getting stuck in, fight and flight. And then our system can only cope with that for so long before it switches off down into freeze. And so
yeah,
I might actually go over to the next one
yeah.
because
I also want to
that
touch
shows us.
on while you're switching over, I also wanted to touch on and state that a lot of the massive things that we're actually seeing in our world at the moment in regards to like modalities will actually like fling you into what you think is actually like an organic release, like a cathartic release, is actually just that, like a highly activated nervous system. So I'm talking like extreme, like breath work modalities, extreme, like shamanic journey modalities, where you're going in and you're around a lot of activated nervous systems that are in that state. That is actually what you are, because our nervous systems talk to each other, of course. So when we're in collaborative spaces, and so what we think we're doing is like actually healing, and this has been like such a thing that's like kind of like I've seen it for what it is now. And actually, we're just in a highly activated nervous system state, right? And it's not
Exactly.
actually having an organic releasing of
And
your
it's not
traumas and
it's
pain.
not safe either. And I
Yeah,
think I'm glad that you brought this up because I feel very strongly about this as well.
me too.
And especially the thing that the workshops, the weekend retreats, the things that are quite quick and they're quite intense and they really kind of smash people. And then I find what sort of happens is whether it's a week down the track or a month or however long, but quite frequently people will crash. And so they've gone into that heightened state and they can't maintain it and they'll crash back down into freeze and then
Yeah,
they'll feel like they're a failure. And then they'll go into this shame of like, oh, I'm never
yeah,
going to heal myself. And I've gone and done all this work at these retreats and these workshops and all of these, heal all of your trauma forever kind of promises.
hmm,
Um, and then they're left kind of feeling like it's their fault. There must be something wrong with them. And it's
totally.
absolutely not the case. It's the way that the work's being delivered and that there's not resourcing and there's not education on how
Hmm.
the nervous system works and how our bodies actually, process things.
Yeah,
Um, and time and consistency as well. We can't just go and release everything and be healed
one and
magically.
done.
No,
That's not how it works. It's
it
not one
just
and done.
doesn't work. No, it is showing up for yourself over and over again and implementing resources and tools. And, life's always going to throw curveballs at us. Even when we think that we're
Mm,
nailing things and everything's going well, something might come at us totally unexpected and crash us down again. And that's okay. Like, it
for
doesn't
sure.
mean you've failed. It means come back to your resources or rebuild some more or, like
Yeah.
it's an ongoing thing. I don't see
Absolutely. And I think
healing as
people,
a destination.
it's not a destination. And I think people can also get addicted to those
Oh,
states
yes.
and those like ultra high sort of moments as well. So they'll keep chasing that experience or that sensation. And
Yeah.
it's really not about anything more than that. Like we can actually get addicted to these states, especially because they
Yes.
habitually become like our like normal
Yeah,
state, so to speak. So yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're ready.
So
Dive into yes.
just yes. So here we've got a nice little example of polyvagal theory. And so this is still working with those states, but instead of just having that freeze and then the fight and flight, we've also got the social engagement, which is actually our ventral vagal part. And so I think the vagus nerve has become pretty popular lately. I think a lot of
100%.
people are, if they haven't heard of it, then it won't be far away, kind of thing. And so this is part of the vagus nerve that runs the whole way through our body. It runs like behind our ear and into our chest and down into our gut. Um, Interestingly enough, they're kind of so your fight and flight part of your nervous system is sympathetic, affects more of your chest and upper area in terms of where the nerve actually travels and what it's doing to your organs as such. So it's going to
Mm.
increase your blood pressure and your heart rate and adrenaline and oxygen circulation. You're going to like hyperventilate kind of thing. And then that freeze parasympathetic is more the gut response, and
Mhm.
that nerve travels down there, and it's then it's decreasing that heart rate, and it's also increasing what's happening down here. And
Yeah.
so the ventral vagal is like all up here, throat wise, and so yeah, engaging that with like massage is really nice and stuff like that. Anyway, getting a little bit off track.
I wanted to special note that fawn isn't on here, and I think fawn
No, it's not. Yeah.
needs to be on here, and especially when we're looking at the nervous system as well, because I think it is one that women, especially, will actually deviate into a lot more than these other responses out of fear of like not being able to fight. So fawning and also the nervous system is largely as everything's sort of coming down around us as we speak, we're starting to realize that the medical industry is largely only it's all based off of men. So even the nervous system and everything is all based off of men at this point in time, and the actual nervous system response for women has not been like heavily researched and understood. So I wanted to just special note that because yeah, fawning is a huge part of this whole yeah, up and
And
down.
there definitely is becoming like more research available in having like coexisting states as well and overlapping states, and that,
Yeah,
they're kind of moving away from this idea of, oh, I'm just in fight and flight or I'm just in social engagement. Like quite often they are overlapping, and we are like, our body is so fast in comparison to our mind that it's,
yeah,
moving in and out and between and crossing over a lot. So I'm pretty sure, from my understanding, fawn kind of sits in between sort of fight and flight and freeze.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely,
yeah,
yeah.
so it's like we can still interact, but it's not from a fighting place or a running away place. It's a okay, I'll do what you want place. Like, yeah,
Absolutely,
just
yeah.
to survive and stop yourself going into absolute freeze. So
Hmm.
yes, so yeah, TRE basically works with polyvagal theory, on the idea that we are activating the nervous system and going into the sympathetic, and then we are doing it in a safe way, in a controlled way, so that we can come back down that curve into deactivation again. And so, I mean, people might start their journey in TRE from any of these states. So, like yesterday, I had a session with a lady who was quite overwhelmed and dysregulated. She was definitely in her more sympathetic system. Um, and there were times where I think she tapped into freeze, and we could kind of see that in the body, where the body actually found itself in this kind of contorted position. And that was it. It stuck there. And I was like, what's happening? She's like, my body's frozen. And I was like, yeah, okay. So we're moving back up into freeze. How do we come back down? And it was like a manipulation of helping the body start to activate again to come back down into sympathetic, and then the ventral vagal. But we kind of see this as like you have to go through the states, right? So we can't skip from freeze to social engagement or social engagement to freeze. We do have to come through sympathetic. And this is what I wanted to tap into specifically with your work, Sheeana, is
Mm.
that um, it's quite a safe way of moving up and down this ladder, right? So if we have somebody that has been living their lives in a full, numbed out, disassociated kind of way, for them to come back into a social engagement area, they have to come through this sympathetic.
They
And that
do.
scares people a lot because often what we find is coming out of that state, people will go into anxiety or they'll go into rage or they'll have, quite overwhelming feelings and then it's too much and puts them straight back into freeze. And
Yeah.
so I think by tapping into arousal and our sexual pleasure, and it is tapping into that part of the nervous system, but in a way that's like not overwhelming,
Yeah.
um, and in a totally different um, perspective to this. Oh, I have to have anxiety to get out of depression before I can get back to being regulated. Like it's not the case. We don't have to do that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that your work does that. It's a really lovely way to come back down the ladder. Yeah.
Come back down the ladder. Yes. A lot of people don't realize that you have to go through those states to get back into that social engagement space, actually. That was all,
Yes.
I never knew that until my
I
studies.
know.
And I was like, okay, I have to actually process and go through these feelings and sensations. And it's interesting because when we're talking about body parts as well, from a somatic level, and we are shut off and numb, like, in certain aspects and places, like we have to feel the sensations underneath the numbness and the freeze and the shut outness before we get back to a place of alchemizing that into actual rightful order, so to
Yeah,
speak, right? So
exactly.
yeah,
Think like the process in which we do that, and I have no doubt that you would work in this way too, like with Peter Levine's work with pendulation and titration. So,
yeah,
just touching in, feeling, okay, that's enough, tap back out to safety. And so when we go like in and out, so that's the pendulating part, we're going in and out, and then the titrating is just that little bits at a time. And so when we were talking before about these weekend workshops and stuff that just throw people in. Like there is no titration or pendulation there at all.
yes,
And when we do that, like it can open us up in a safe way to move down this ladder so we're not being chucked back into that freeze response. So, and
absolutely.
that's
Hell
essentially what
yeah.
TRE is doing as well. Yes. Yeah. And so with TRE, I can probably close out of this now.
Yep.
I really just wanted to kind of highlight that curve and the ladder kind
Oh,
of
it's so
aspect.
important. I think it's so important for us as humans, but to understand how our nervous system works, how to feel it, how to do it, and then to understand how our body then organically moves through these things. Because if I find if you've got for me anyway, if I got an understanding of how my body's moving through, it's less scary. Like I've said before, I've had huge releases and I didn't know what the fuck was happening to my body.
Yeah.
And then that actually like used to scare me. Like, when I used
Yes.
to have these tremors or these releases or these sensations that had moved through my body through like peak sexual experiences or whatever, it would scare me and I didn't know what was wrong. And I actually thought, I was in pain or wounding or trauma. And then when I understood, like moving through, like my body was releasing, and it was a safe space to actually move through like grief, heartache, pain, trauma, especially as somebody who has gone through like sexual assault and violations through various different avenues. And a lot of women carry that in their body, even from generations previously. It's like we can actually understand that it's our body's natural, safe, organic way to move through these things, right? So it's our body's natural TRE experience, which
Yeah.
when I knew that, and then like I could tell my partner like what was happening to me, and then they could
Yeah.
hold space effectively. That was
Exactly.
then not a traumatic experience. I actually was able to move through the process. They didn't try and fix, solve, soothe, or anything. I would just cry, be obliterated open, have my tremors, and then far out the type of healing and expansion I'd feel in my body after that. Incredible. And this is like where I want us all as women to be able to go to, understanding our body, understanding its releases and processes, and then teach people. We shouldn't have to teach, but like, how to hold space for to naturally move through things so they don't have to be this big, huge, cathartic, scary thing. It's like, I can do this in a moment. I can heal in a moment. I can experience pleasure in a moment. I can release this in a second, right? I can release this through ecstatic states of pleasure, or like in safe spaces of just being with myself and my body. And that's incredible. That is the power of understanding TRE and the nervous system. Woo
Yeah,
woo.
100%. Yes, and I love that you highlight that that understanding part. And I think this is, for me as a holistic counselor, holistic being all of it, And so while I'm very passionate about working with the body, there is still some intellectual stuff that's got to go on. So it's like,
Yeah.
understanding and educating enough to go, oh, okay, I'm not a freak, or I am safe, I'm not dying, or, whatever the
Right.
experience be, um, to then be able to actually fully drop into it. And so, and
Yes.
TRE is very much focused on re-educating people about their perspective on shaking. That has to be the first part, because if people have already associated shaking with, oh no, that happens to me when I get really anxious and I don't want to feel anxious, so I'm not going to shake, the body automatically feels unsafe about it and won't open up to it. And
Yeah.
so it very much is about changing that mindset to start with. And I think that when we learn about the nervous system and that it's actually natural and what we're, wired to do, it kind of releases that fear a little bit around, oh, something's not right. It's like, no, actually, this is what my body needs to do.
Yeah.
Um, and in saying that, I mean, there is the possibility with TRE of still going too far. I mean, we are activating the nervous system. And so, as I said, when we activate it too much for too long, it'll just chuck us into freeze again. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, when we do work with TRE, it is all about safety, it is all about grounding, and it's all about self regulation, essentially teaching the body to self regulate as well. And so, we work with this effort scale of like 1 to 10, 10 being, you're really going for it, like having a hard workout at the gym. One's like, we're sitting here right now, no effort. And we always only work to about a 5 to 7 out of 10. And it's quite interesting to see how many people don't realize their scale. So I think we're also conditioned to kind of always do the best, perform well, give it your all, like, and so when people come in, they're already pushing beyond their 7 out of 10 and not realizing it. And so a big part of my job is to teach people to notice in themselves where their limits are. And the body responds so much better when we actually give it a bit more space, when we back off a bit. And so we do lots of rest breaks and we do lots of checking in, like there should never be any pain or tension or that kind of thing. Um, and it's kind of different from like I'm sure anybody who's gone and done an intense gym workout would, or sitting on the wall, the good old wall sit, getting that shake up on your legs, right? And so we actually do a wall sit as part of our activating exercises in TRE, but it's much different to like a gym setting. So I'm not getting you to sit on the wall for 5 minutes as low as you possibly can and yelling at you and telling you, stay down, keep it together. Like it's not like that at all. If anything, if you're starting to fatigue a little bit, then we're going to move up the wall and we're going to give the body a little bit more space so it can actually relax and open. And that's when the neurogenic tremors come in and we can actually like really start embracing a full body flow. But safety is 100% the key. Teaching our body to feel safe with it, and yeah, and often less is more with TRE, and that's what I love about it. Is we're not pushing; it's just listening to the body and following the body. So
Yeah, listening to the body and following the body. Love that because, yeah, we always in society have come from a very mental level and layer. And that's what I love about both of our work and what we do and the somatics and like listening to the body and just allowing space to be with what is, right? And most of the times you don't even have to force change, go into anything. It just organically, and this is like, this was a huge piece and part for me understanding as well as like you actually just need to give like presence, awareness, attention to these pieces and aspects in the body and sometimes in the mind, and they organically shift and move with that. So
Really incredible.
it's
Yeah.
incredible. We don't have to do anything.
And
We're already perfect.
I know. Absolutely. We are totally. But yes, that is an amazing thing about TRE too. We don't start a session going into somebody's story or why you're here. I mean, we can if that's what somebody needs to do.
Yeah.
But I mean, this work was originally started around a lot of war-stricken countries. And so people, fighting in wars and the families that were affected by war. So really, really high trauma. We're talking about war veterans and flashbacks and that kind of thing. And so this type of trauma, reflecting back on your story is often actually not all that helpful. It's actually re-traumatizing. And
100%.
yeah, and so it's like so much of like a body thing going on from bombs being dropped and whatnot. And so they actually found that this was really helpful with that kind of trauma because we
Mhm.
didn't have to talk about it. We didn't have to know what we were releasing. It was literally just letting the body do what it needed to do. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and that it is wise and that it does know what its needs, and it's just
Yeah.
trusting that. Because a lot of people, I mean, I'm guilty of this too, intellectualize things a lot, right? And so analyze things a lot. Like we have to know exactly what is happening all the time. And I think a bit of that's like, a bit of trauma in itself around needing control, right?
Mm,
Um, so yeah, that's another reason why I love TRE too, because it does take me out of my mind. And there's like
yeah.
this full body coherence of presence of what is happening without all the chatter. And so
Yeah.
we just, yeah, really stay with whatever's happening in the body.
Yes.
And sometimes it's actually hilarious as well. And this is another thing that I love about it, is that it doesn't have to be always like really heavy and like crying or like, and don't get me wrong, that happens for sure. We can have these natural releases, but sometimes it can actually be really lighthearted and fun as well. Like,
Yeah.
I've been in group spaces where, the whole group will just be laughing. And because it can be hilarious sometimes, you're watching your body just do these movements and you're like, oh my God, look at my body and what it's doing. And like, there's no emotional attachment to it. It's just happening. And you're like, haha, this is pretty funny.
Mm,
Um, and yet I witnessed another young man, really intense tremors, and his session kind of went from um, laughter, like extreme laughter, like I don't know what he was letting out, but it was hilarious. And then it kind of like flew into like emotion and tears and bawling his eyes out, and then back into like this more freedom space of like neutrality and like just coherence with the fluidity of his whole body moving as one. And it was
mm.
really beautiful to watch. And at the end of it, he's like, I have no idea what any of that was about, but I feel so good right now. And I think that's amazing,
Mm.
especially for, yeah, those people that do struggle to go into the story or into visual memories and that kind of thing. Like, yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really key point is like rehashing and remembering is your body remembering and you re-traumatizing, right? Like the body keeps the score, as we all know, and we're finding out now. If you haven't read that book, sensational, that is re-traumatizing. Even reading that was
yeah,
re-traumatizing for
it
me.
can
But
be,
anyway,
yes.
but it's true. Like you don't have to remember the thing. If you're getting flashbacks, you need to stop those sorts of things. But I just wanted to share also that I love a few points that you just stated there as like how you love TRE and how it naturally just, because it gets you out of your head and into your body. And that's the exact reason why I love sex and like love my work and love getting women like out of their heads and into their bodies because the amount of like processing your body naturally does in those states, whether that is like joygasms, crygasms, releasing, tremors, like when we stop trying to make sex look a certain way and our body like and the tremors a certain
Yeah,
way, we let what needs to happen, right? And so some of my most amazing experience I never thought that I could experience was exactly that, like having these, like doing vaginal reflexology, like using eggs and stuff, and then having these like a rupture of like joy, like bursting out from my, and just like it trembling all over, and like I just fits of laughter, like I was crying, like laughing hysterically wild from within. And my
Yes.
body was shaking, and I didn't know what the fuck was going on. But I just feel like, like because sex is like life, right? Like our body and our how we have sex is like a living testament to our life. So it's all different ways. And if we just allow our body to be the guidance and wisdom in these spaces, it'll just do its thing without us having to go to war with ourselves, thinking that we're wrong or it's bad or we shouldn't do that, or try and shut down those states and those natural expressions, right? And so, love that, love that, love that. I would love to talk about, now we'll probably end up wrapping up, but I just wanted to give a few points and tips and people who obviously want to start naturally releasing, like if they want to do this at home, if they want to get guidance, obviously they can seek a practitioner that like is an expert in this area, of course, and I would recommend that. But I also would like to just share some little tips and pieces that are quite naturally safe for people to move through. One that I guide my clients through quite often, especially as women, like holding a lot of like trauma, pain, and emotions within our hips and our pussy and our pelvic region. I always love, and it's interesting because that's the crossover with like what you do, obviously, like butterflying your legs out. And a
Yes.
natural way that you can do this if you want to do this at home and try it for yourself is to just lay down on your back, put your feet on the floor, your knees up in the air. And what I do to get them to sort of relax, open their pelvis and their hips is to actually like butterfly their legs out. You can't see my hands on the podcast, but
Yeah.
butterflying the knees out and just doing that a few times until you have to actually like hold your legs at a certain position where you start to feel a little bit of like tiredness or weakness, and your body will start actually naturally tremoring. I also love to add this exercise with like yes and no, like embodied yes and no, which is really powerful for women like who actually have been violated and have medical trauma and birth trauma and all this sort of stuff, and like listening to their bodies yes and no when they're butterflying their knees out. So on opening, say yes, either internally or out loud. I would recommend out loud because it's powerful and potent. Pussy is linked to your voice, as we know. And then say no as you shut your knees, and doing that a few times until you actually start to feel your body sort of tremor, and it'll release naturally. Always highly recommend. This is just one variation of lots of TRE exercises and processes, but one I think is deeply beneficial for women in this region because we hold so much. We're seeing the huge unwinding of like twerking and activating your sacral and your reproductive organs as we speak. So I think that is really potent to do, and to get a touch and feel for like letting your body organically tremor. Because this always happens in spaces where women are like de-armoring, obviously, and pressing these points inside their vagina as well. But is there any more that you have to add on that, my little love?
You did just make me like think of yeah, just when you were talking about that womb space as well, and I was just thinking about the psoas muscle
Mm.
too, and how important it is in this work. So, and I know that that is like down in this region. It kind of holds like our upper body to our legs pretty much, but it does run down that sort of groin area. And that this natural tremor reflex actually releases our psoas muscle from the inside. And so I know that there's probably a fair few people who have also heard of like psoas release massage and trigger point and that kind of stuff too, which is great. But the psoas muscle is actually so connected to the neurogenic tremoring movements because it's our first muscle that will respond to stress. And so its job when we are stressed or faced with threat is that it wants to pull us forward into like this, like a fetal position, because we would be protecting all our vital organs, like our heart and all of everything here, and connecting our face and kind of crunching down. So the psoas muscle pulls us into this position to protect us. again, we're not running away from lions anymore, so we don't actually need to do that. And if you're in your boss's office getting, a lecture about something and you're feeling that stress, it'd be, a bit bizarre for you to curl up into the fetal position. So the psoas muscle is still doing that work, though. It is still pulling, and then we are, resisting the actual movement. And so that's why it becomes so tight and holds so much stress and tension and trauma around that area as well. And so,
Mm.
yes, this shaking, this natural shaking that we can do actually releases that muscle from the inside to the outside, which is
Oof.
quite incredible. So,
That is so incredible. I love that so much. And I find it really interesting because a lot of women that I work with have this like somatic disconnection from their top to the bottom half, right? Or like feel numbness down to their bottom half. And that is really interesting to see the threads of those sort of interconnected.
and it's actually interesting that you see that because a lot of the people that I have worked with so far as well have this cut off, and so
Oh,
they'll get lots of tremoring through the legs
yeah.
or maybe a bit of the hips. But then that'll stop, and then the top half will tremor. The shoulders will start going, the arms will start going, that kind of thing. Um, but there's like this block right in the middle, and
Yes.
so my job as a facilitator is to notice, where the blocks are, where the movement's not happening, what's about to start moving, and offer those facilitations for different positions and even manual manipulation with hands and stuff like that as well. It was really cool. I did a session the other night and pulling on somebody's like knees. So they had full knees just back and forth like this, just so much energy in the bottom half, nothing at the top. And just pulling on their knees, so kind of like pulling their hips out of the joints a little bit, just
Mm.
like released so much. And next minute, their whole upper body just went wild. Like it was, yeah, it was quite intense to watch actually. Um, and then sort of starting to slowly release that so the body could integrate, oh, we're doing both sides now.
Yes,
And
I love
then,
that so
yeah, then
much.
watching that fluidity throughout the whole body was really beautiful. But yes, did want to
Incredible.
agree with you there that it is super common to have this disconnect top and bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, what is that? I don't know. We'll go into it another time for sure.
Yeah. Anyway,
Uh,
yes.
I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on and talk. There was a lot of juicy information in this chat, a lot of heady stuff, a lot of like very cognitive like understanding that went on, which is what I
Ironic, right? With our,
love.
considering we're talking about somatic practices. Yeah.
Which is what I love for like love from you and I love about you is you're able to bring this really like heady science like interactive type stuff that I can never share because I'm not very logically minded and I struggle with this shit so much. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom and your gift and your medicine and your love and I just fucking love you so much, of course. I will hand it over to you to say anything else that you'd like to do, how people can get in contact you if they want to book in for sessions, what you got going on before I wrap up.
Yeah, cool. What have I got going on? Okay, so I just do sessions by contact only, so I don't have like an online booking system or anything. But if you
So
want to reach out,
underground.
yes, I am pretty. Yeah, I don't work with a lot of people. I have a fair bit of space, so I'm just, yeah. But yes, please do reach out if you do want to work or are interested in the TRE process. My website, can you
I'll
just
share
put
all
that
the links.
something? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So my
absolutely.
website is the best way, and my details will be on there to reach out if you want to do something with me. Also have just finished it's going to start off as a self-led sort of course called Resilience. And so it's a 5-part course on building resilience.
Mhm.
Again, I don't believe resilience is a destination, but instead a path that we continually go through. And so, based on my work as a holistic counselor and on my somatic therapies, yeah, that is what that course is for. So that is going to be available pretty soon as well through my website. And then next year, I intend on rolling that out as an in-person group course, which will be on the Sunshine Coast. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody who listened, watched, joined in with us here. It's been a blast and a lot. So make sure you get
Yeah.
out nature and resource and take it all in, of course. And yeah, I'd love to deepen the conversation. So reach out to either of us, to discuss with us if you try any of this sort of like tremor releasing or have it happen now that you understand what's going on with your body. What's your experience with it? We'd love to connect. You can find us on socials, me on socials mostly. And yeah, I'd love to deepen the conversation and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Mwah. Bye.
Bye, darling.
Oh, I have to stop it. Yeah. Woo.